Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadena, Head of Growth at SaaS Group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. Here, I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. And today with me is Glenn Rogers, co-founder and CEO at Float, one of the top-rated resource management SaaS tools to keep projects profitable, workloads sustainable, and teams in sync. That's a great promise to have to say, and I want to learn how you're doing this. So welcome to the show.
Look forward to getting into it. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time. And finally, we're almost in the same time zone. I mean, I'm so happy to get some Australian founders here. It doesn't happen very often, but yeah, happy to do it. And let's maybe start with your background and just the whole inspiration behind Float.
Sure thing. Yes, I'm Glenn Rogers, CEO and co-founder of Float. I'm based here in Melbourne, and yes, lead a team of 50 now of people primarily async. We're remote across more than 20 countries now, but Float was founded back in 2011, so we've been thinking about this problem for a long time now. We still continue to be fully bootstrapped, and it's been a wonderful journey. But yes, it started with this idea that the resource planning was primarily done with a spreadsheet. And this was a problem we encountered at an ad agency, myself and my co-founder Lars, when we were working in New York. And we figured there had to be a better way. And so we came up with the idea of Float. We built a solution to a problem we knew existed then, and have been on the journey ever since.
That's wonderful. I hear so often like that was a problem that was primarily solved by Excel sheets, and we wanted to change that. So thank you, Excel sheets, for being the reason for
A constant inspiration.
yes. So much frustration that people make their own wonderful tools. So wonderful. So what is Float and what is the problem that you're solving? Can you maybe elaborate a little more?
Sure thing. So Float is a software as a service that helps teams sort of plan their capacity so they can make better decisions on ultimately what projects they take on. And typically these are professional services teams like ad agencies that are managing multiple projects at once. They have many client requests they're fielding. And so whereas sort of project management sort of puts the project first, Float puts the people first and the planning of their capacity. And today, look, there's just so many more dynamics around how work is planned that didn't exist back in 2011. We have flexible work hours for people working remotely, hybrid, different locations, different types of time off. Float visualizes all of that so that ultimately you can make better decisions faster.
That's wonderful. I feel like putting people first is kind of a motto of the company, but we'll get there. But anyway, the question that I have, you started in 2011 and you're making somewhere around 10 mil ARR and you're fully bootstrapped, fully remote. Is it kind of like beyond your expectations of what you had about Float when you started it? Or was it the idea, of building a solid business, running it for 15 years or maybe more, building this dependable software for teams around the world? So what was the aspiration in 2011?
In 2011, it was this itch you had to scratch, this problem that existed, and you knew there had to be a better solution for. I think as founders, and I've chatted to many founders, you just want this thing to exist in the world, and so you will it into existence. But I think the journey since has certainly gone beyond the imagination at the time and the ambition at the time. And frankly, I've just been in love with the journey. I know it sounds a bit trite, but like that journey of growth over that period, it's enabled personal growth, but also just enabled us to sort of keep driving towards that vision of helping teams make the most of their time and live their best work lives. That's how we spend our time at work, and reach more people, reach more customers. That's always been more fun. Have opportunities like this. Simon Sinek has this great book called The Infinite Game, and sort of a mindset of continuous improvement and long-term goals. And I relate a lot to that. I think that's what's driven a lot of what keeps us doing what we're doing and being on the field and playing the game.
Fascinating. Okay, so I want to ask a bit more about bootstrapping, right? Because again, well, you started in 2011, right? But the industry and just the space where you're operating has become so much more competitive since then. And like maybe it made sense to start bootstrapped, start small, just like you said, will that thing into existence. But since the industry has changed and there are so many players right now, why did you continue staying bootstrapped and not go after VC money? And like, what helped you in this sustainable bootstrap journey over the years?
Yeah, and look, speaking openly, I think like most founders back in 2011, we went out and sought funding, and we frankly couldn't get it. It wasn't an attractive problem space, wasn't an attractive resource scheduling, wasn't all that attractive. So we certainly weren't dogmatic, but I think over the years, it's become one of our greatest advantages, and a real privilege to sit here today and say we are still 100% bootstrapped, because it gives us so much optionality, so much sort of. We can decide the path we take, and that I don't take for granted. That said, it's also, and in doing so, has built up a really strong practices in how we do scale, how we ensure that we have more revenue than we have operating expenses, and that only now is what many of the large VC funded companies are having to get good at. We've been doing that for 13 years, so that's a great advantage to then decide how you play the next stage of your journey, and whether that requires raising funds or seeking different investments or partnerships. You have those principles in place to make those calls when you need to, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Okay. All right. So how do you structure? You said you have all the practices that helped you over the years. So how do you go about your spending? So like, if what is basically the cap on like how much profit you should be making per, I don't know, per month, per year, to start hiring, to maybe tap into advertisement, or doing something that requires a bit more investment. How do you go about your spending there?
Yeah, I think what it does do is promote a really strong feedback loop of experiment and iterate and improve, because there is no one answer to that. And I think what we're trying to do simultaneously is grow the team, and then experiment with ways to increase the funnel of leads, so the advertising, and then upskill in areas we weren't that strong in, and all while doing this within the constraint of the money that comes in each week, month. And so that in of itself just requires you to move really fast on small incremental ideas, and that's something we've got really good at, frankly. So that's something that we'll continue to do, and we've got really good at. And now we're just fortunate to be able to place a few bigger bets with the revenue that we couldn't, say, 10 years ago.
That's That's great. So maybe you could share like one thing about, spending, how to be mindful about it for the founders that are considering, you know, um, adding investment. And well, frankly, maybe you think that it's not necessary. There are ways to cut costs and there are ways to be smarter about spending. So, what is that one ultimate thing that helps you always be mindful about that?
Sure. Yeah. So when it comes to spending, I think there's sort of two big buckets for us, which is team. That's your biggest expense, and then marketing. And for us, I think on the team side of things, the one thing I will say is you can get very experimental, and you can really take big bets in product. But with org design, so much has been done before and done well, and roles have been established that you can really learn a lot from other founders, and reading and how other companies have been built. So the one thing I will say, and what I have learned, is don't get too tricky with org design. You grow with a very specific model and certain roles and departments. So that's how I think about team design. And then for marketing, counterintuitively, I think we started by doing so many things, and we now do less, but we do it very well with strong domain expertise. So, I can give you an example. We started by doing conference sponsorships and freemium and every social channel, and now we do two social channels, and we do Google AdWords, but we get very good at it, and we go very deep on it, and it's very intuitively we understand it, and we can draw a line from $1 spent to $1 converted. So that's I guess how we think about marketing spend and scaling that.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense. I mean, when you're starting, you kind of want to experiment with everything to just validate faster what works and where to focus, and then you just double down on that. So that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, so a bit more about your team, right? And just the whole organizational structure. When I was doing my research, I noticed like how transparent you were about it. Like I found this position that you're hiring for. I don't remember what it was, but it was everything was out there. The salary, the what kind of flexibility you're offering, what kind of perks are there. How you like to work and blah blah blah. And there is this video available on the website where I think each member of the team is there and everyone's talking about the culture. So what about that like radical transparency for you in the flow? Like how does it help you in growth and HR marketing? I don't really like the term, but anyway. So yeah, why did you decide to go that way? Because a lot of companies are very very shy about sharing culture, let alone the salary expectations.
Sure. Yeah. So I think there's two parts of that: the sort of transparency and then the culture. And we've made a very deliberate we've made a very deliberate intent the last few years to be more transparent in our hiring. And so we've always been great at documenting. I think it's such a core tenet to a great remote team distributed in more than 20 countries that you get very good at documenting. So we already had the information. It was more about would we share it? And so we decided yes. And this is for many sort of intrinsic reasons that the idea that the more we can share about life at Float and expectations, salary, the sort of value exchange here when we're hiring for candidates, the better these candidates can decide if Float is right for them and opt into that, which means by virtue of that, we get a high quality of candidate that is more likely to be successful at Float. It's a win-win. And so we've really leaned into that. The quality of candidate now is far higher than it was a couple of years ago. And they're more in tune with how we work. So they are, the interview process, the whole process from interview to onboarding is generally just a lot more productive and effective.
Okay, and you keep saying that you're distributed in 20 countries, and that is great. I mean, we're at saas group. I think we're at 32 now, so
Wow.
it's wild. But we're a little bit bigger, right? We're over 300 people. So
Right on.
and for us, the communication and high performance is something that we strive for. But obviously there are challenges, right? So many people, so many time zones. So how do you work around it, and how do you make sure that your distributed teams are high performing while being fully remote?
Sure. And look, we have the benefit of being remote from day one. We founded Float in New York City, Lars and I. Lars is now in Seattle and I'm back here in Melbourne. So we have built these practices for 13 years and iterated on that. And so it's not like we've started at a single destination or office and then had to try and make this transition or have a hybrid situation where things are happening in one location and folks are missing out. And I think that's so important to the success of remote, because there is no fear of missing out. There is no centralized, knowledge base that people aren't privy to, and that's been a huge advantage for us. So it does mean we rely heavily on async communication. It does mean we get very good at that. It does mean we leverage tools like Loom to share context like this, but async, and Notion for documenting our ways of working, our values, our roadmap. We get very good at written documentation as well. So yes, again, we continue to chip away at these practices and improve on them. And we tend to attract folks that thrive in that environment too, because what it does do is provide a great advantage to long blocks of uninterrupted time, and that's something we actually have a lot of. It flowed very few meetings, long blocks of time to get work done, and we find that's also very productive.
That's wonderful. So, what was one tool that uh, gave you like a boost of communication and just overall understanding of how to work together? Was it Loom? Was it Notion? Was it Float?
Look, for us, I'm going to have to give credit to Slack. We started on Slack around 2011, so it was right when it was sort of beta, so that private beta period, and we still use it today. And I think a lot of people hate on Slack and what it is or isn't, but I'm a huge fan, and we run our business on it. So big ups to Slack. And then I think the next tool has been most tendential, I guess, in our remote journey has been Loom. I think it's been a game changer for just providing context to feedback and discussion that text can't, or that you miss in body language. So while it doesn't replace, conversations like this, and that still happens, and we still have in-person meetups, and we make time for in-person discussion. We can communicate an incredible amount through both the written and video medium async.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there is nothing that will eventually completely substitute like the real conversation. But Loom is great. And I'm there with you about Slack. I don't know why everyone's
Fun.
so bitter about it. I mean, come on.
It's been good
um,
for us.
all right. But yeah, good. All right, wonderful. So you mentioned deep collaboration with your team, and the fact that you're also talking with other founders, learning from them. And I know that you're organizing Australia's biggest founders meetup, and I would love to learn more about it, because I feel like, especially when you're fully remote, when one founder is in one country and another is in a totally different part of the world, it can get lonely, it can get a little overwhelming, and community helps. And like, we've experienced it ourselves, and we also have like these retreats and the events that we do for founders in the industry, and it has such a tremendous effect on us and on just building relationships and staying in the loop, knowledge sharing. So how did you come to creating this, or co-creating? Tell me a bit more about it. I know very little. The Australian Founders Meetup, and what's there for you and for the growth of the company too.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Look, when I returned from New York, I'd been in New York 8 years and returned to my home city here in Melbourne. I just didn't know any founders. I didn't know anyone in SaaS. So I figured the quickest way to do that, this is when meetup.com was a thing, was to just start a meetup, which was a SaaS specific meetup here in Melbourne. But what it really gave me permission to do was just to reach out to people that I otherwise didn't know or couldn't connect with an opportunity to speak at or attend. And so I do that every month. And me and the two other co-creators, we just invite folks we really just wanted to know or get to know. It's a bit of a selfish play, but it was amazing. And from that, I've met so many folks in similar positions or in the community, whether it be Michael, one of the founders of Millernote here in Melbourne, or James Cameron, who's one of the VCs and a very deep SaaS knowledge here at Airtree in Sydney. So incredible. I encourage everyone to kick off these communities when you want those opportunities, and to not be afraid just to reach out to people that you want to learn from. I think if you're genuinely curious and authentic, and you take the time and consideration, it's incredible who you can connect with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember this one point. We did an event in Barcelona for Spanish founders, and no one really knew each other, right? And it was all new. And we sat at the table, and I was like, "Oh God, this could turn to be a bit awkward." But then the conversation started floating, and we stumbled on AI, obviously, because like 2023 was the AI boom, and people just started ranting about the fact that ChatGPT API is so bad and no one can figure it out, and people started pitching in, and that was kind of the common problem that they found at this table. And I believe that some collaborations were agreed upon there, and it was fascinating to see that people who 5 minutes ago didn't know anything about each other came together because of us,
Right.
and found something valuable.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love hearing these stories, because it only takes one person to lead it, or take the time just to put the right people in the right room, and wonderful outcomes can happen. I love that. I love that energy that comes from those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has been, and if any, has there been a topic that you and the other founders have been continuously discussing at this meetups in 2023?
So that actual meetup we sort of discontinued. It was a great when I first. I've been back here now 6 years, and so we ran that for a couple, and then sort of sunsetted a little bit. I guess Meetup.com kind of did as well. But I've actually I've remained friends with many of those founders to date. And so, look, I think what's been challenging in SaaS has been what appeared so simple and easy in 2021 has become incredibly challenging in 2022, 23, as folks get a lot more strategic about their software purchases, as I guess basic unit economics come into play in how software is sold. And that hasn't been easy for bootstrap founders either. And I think a lot of the discussions we've been having about how you navigate that world, where less folks are spending money on software, you've got high inflation, a lot of tough economic conditions that make you work harder. And so, never been dull conversations the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, absolutely making you work harder, but also making you work smarter and experiment a bit more. Right. So what has been an experiment, or maybe, something that you did in 2023 amidst this, turbulent time, that has helped float?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think we've always been good at sort of the experiment culture, and trying things and iterating on those over the years. But we just got a lot smarter as a business, right? Like, so for years we had folks grandfathered on old plans and never took the time to move them onto current plans and current pricing. So we did that, and that's been a huge impact to our revenue. We had features out there that just didn't have uptake, or weren't managed properly. We had integrations that were costing us a lot of tech debt, but weren't being used by a significant portion of users. We sunset those. And in doing all of that, it became a lot clearer what our product was, what our customers loved about our product, our biggest champions, because they were willing to pay that current pricing. And all of that has been a huge advantage now as we move forward. We're much more focused. We know who we are. We know who we're building for. So as you say, like, it's been challenging for any SaaS, any founder. But I think the outcomes are better products, better, happier customers. And I think that's a net positive.
Right, right. I feel like a lot of, yeah, like you said, a lot of businesses are becoming a bit more focused because they were at first afraid to to narrow it down because, what if we lose money? But then,
Right.
yeah, if you're becoming a little smarter about the niche that you're serving, about the problem that you're solving, and about your pricing, then it shouldn't be an issue. And regarding the pricing, I mean, that's a very interesting topic, right? A lot of founders are afraid to change their pricing, and I mean, even in our portfolio, we have a couple of companies that have never changed their pricing, right? They have just grandfathered their loving customers all these years, and now they're starting to become a bit more focused and experiment with it. So, how did it go for you? Like, okay, one question would be, how early should you tell your customers that you're done grandfathering them? Is it 1 month, 2 months? Is it, is there any magic number at all? Because, like, for some, it's still going to be too fast. And yeah, how did you change it? And what was the ultimate thing that moved the needle for you?
Sure. Yeah. I think pricing and packaging is so fascinating, both the sort of the behavioral science, but also just how you think about it strategically as a product. So how you incentivize the right behaviors. So we have 3 plans today, a starter, a pro, and an enterprise. And so how do you, align value with each package, and how do you ensure that the starter will soon become the pro over time? And so we think about that a lot. And we did a lot of that exploration during the period of looking at our customer base and what they were paying, and we had data going back to customers 8-9 years old, so we had a lot of information to dig through there. And when it came to the actual grandfathering and decision to move them to current pricing, what we did do is spend a lot of time on the communication side. We were roughly 3 months out was the first comms to those folks affected, and we took the time individually to assess a discount, a sort of ramp up discount for those affected, so that you wouldn't automatically get dropped into the current pricing. Depending on the plan you're on, you stepped into it. So you may have a 20% discount for the next 6 months, and then before you move to current pricing. And in taking that time and consideration, and really taking the time in the email to communicate that specifically, really helped, because it was vastly successful, the actual outcomes. We built in a certain percentage of expected churn. It's been far less than that, and I think it's because of that time and attention that we put into the comms.
That's wonderful. Okay. So just want to come back a little bit to your 0 to 1 kind of journey. So, what were the first steps for Float to get the initial customers? And how has this strategy, or how has this process changed over the years in terms of growth and customer acquisition?
Sure. Look, when we started out, we knew nothing about marketing or go-to-market, or what even that term meant. We built the product
Yeah.
because we wanted it to exist. And in many ways, it was early sort of SaaS 2.0. We thought if we build it, they will come. That was not the case. So we spent, and this is 2011, we spent probably the next 3 to 4 years, one by one, any customer that would find us, any lead that would reach our website, truly trying to overservice them and understand the problem that they were trying to solve with Float. And that was a long process of, I think over the first, 3 months, we had like 5 customers. Over the first year, we had 70. And this did not pay the bills either. So this was the nights and weekends project for me and Lars. When you're selling a product for $29, it wasn't certainly a profitable business. But in doing so, we would continue to learn, iterate, and improve, and get it to a point where we felt really confident in the product to then start to be able to invest in marketing. And again, going back to what has worked effectively for us, focusing on those things that we could draw a direct line to, and that was our paid marketing. And so we'd start with Google AdWords and get very specific and very narrow. I'm a big fan of niche businesses and going deep on a particular vertical. And for us, the idea that someone was looking for resource scheduling software, very specific, we could do very well with intent, particularly if you look at it, within an industry like professional services or ad agencies. So we got very good at a vertical marketing play, and really starting to perfect that, I guess, in many ways throughout the whole buying cycle. So that many of those practices we still do today. I think what we've done better at is scaling the team to bring in the specialists that do that even better, particularly in content marketing, particularly in how our SEO has improved over the year and gone wider in category. That's probably been the biggest investment we've made in scaling growth. We've introduced in the past 2 years the sales assist, and I'm really bullish on the sales opportunity as we move more into the mid-market. That's exciting to me, and I think that's a good example of those domains that we're really looking to, we've been PLG from day one, but really looking to scale into more of over the next couple of years.
We just had an AMA about content marketing and SEO, and that's exactly what one of the guests has been saying. Like once you're ready to go a little bit bigger, it's great to have specific experts going after each channel and doing each part of content marketing and SEO, because then you can really double down on what you're focusing on. So I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And it really, people then naturally know what you stand for and who you are. We now have a Slack community of more than 600 of some of the world's best resource planners. And I think we couldn't have got there if we weren't out there speaking about, resource planning and building that community beyond the product.
That's wonderful. Okay, so just a couple more questions, the usual ones on the podcast. So the first one is, so far, and I mean, I just started thinking about the fact that you started in 2011, and just all the changes that you've seen in the industry, especially like, for example, with SEO. Oh my God, it was so different back then. Like you could rank the top one on Google overnight. And then, all these changes, and it's crazy. Anyway, so what has been over this 13 years the biggest win and the biggest failure?
All right. Well, biggest win. Look, to be honest, the biggest win sounds a little trite. I think it's just that opportunity. I still wake up each day excited to build product with people that inspire me. Honestly, it's been a journey, but that to me, I think as you grow older with your company, I think that idea of building the product and solving the problem, that fades, and it's more exciting to me about building a company that you believe in, and people, bringing on people that you can learn from and inspire you. And I think to me, just that period, this last couple of years, going from 25 to 50 people, I think that's really energized me. And I feel like that's almost been our biggest win, is sort of going from a product to a company. Yeah, I'd say I'd put that up number one.
Okay. What about failures or, challenges, biggest learnings?
I think, like anyone doing this, I think they're just running up against failures and learnings all the time. And I think it hasn't changed in 13 years. Biggest failures, I often, when I think of that question, I think of just poor hiring decisions, because I think that hurts so much. It's so personal. And then we made a lot of those early on. And I think it hurts you as a company and how fast you move, but it also hurts the person involved. They've placed a bet on you. They've committed their career to you, and you've let them down. And it's often you have let them down, whether you just didn't, the job description wasn't clear, the expectations weren't clear, the hiring process was poor. And I look back and sort of that's what disappoints me. And I feel like those early stages of growth, we made a lot of those. So, I think if I look back on the failures, it's often people and hiring.
Interesting. Well, I've been asking this question for 100 episodes almost, and it's always the win or the failure. It's the people that you're working with, and
There we
it's
go.
it's really, yeah, it's really fascinating to see, because, well, ultimately, teams shape the product, teams shape the company, right? So it's really interesting to see how founders talk about this. This is probably
Okay.
why, sorry, when we acquire companies at saas.group, for example, we're so passionate about making sure the team stays, right?
Right
Because
on.
they got to the point when, the company is doing so good, we're interested in owning it, right? So they're doing something right,
Right.
right? So yeah,
Makes
I
total
think,
sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Kind of, yeah. Company is just a collection of people, and I think just the way you bring them together and align them around a vision. I think there's something pretty special in that, and so the idea that you wouldn't bring them along, I think, is wild.
yeah, makes sense. All right, and one more question is about a hack, right? You've been around for 13 years, bootstrapped, fully remote, happy every morning to go to the office and work on this wonderful product. What is your hack to anything, to maybe to better hiring, or to feeling that good about what you're doing, to moving from building a product to a company, or anything else basically that you could definitely recommend doing to other founders?
Sure. If I was saying anything to a SaaS founder starting today, it's this is a marathon. Like, this is not a sprint. You got to look after yourself personally, mentally. Again, 13 years, and I feel like we're just getting started. It's a long journey. It's a big part of your life and your career. So play it that way. Play it for the long term. For me right now, that's probably two things. One, sleep has been a big part of my focus. I know that's a topic on many podcasts. Huberman, they're all talking about sleep. I have my Aura ring, but I think a lot about that because it's easily the most influential on my attitude and my capability at work. I have a 4-year-old daughter that does influence things, but if I get sleep right, I can achieve a lot. And the second hack, I guess, is just reading a lot. I probably didn't read much of a book until I was about 25. I've read a lot since, and I think it just really accelerates learning, language, communication. Doesn't matter what you read. I love nonfiction. I love business books. It sounds boring to most, but I love it, and I think you can go a long way if you read a lot and sleep well.
Oh wow, that's great. That's we're going to have another AMA about you know sustainable and healthy high performance, and I think this is so important to talk about it because, like you said, it's a marathon, and a lot of people get exhausted halfway through and could do so much more if they just were a bit more mindful about what they're doing to themselves. So yeah, thank you for that piece of advice. That's wonderful. All
Right
right.
on.
Well, Glenn, I think it's been great talking with you. I mean, what you're doing with Float and the way you're doing it, I love it. I think it's a great inspiration for a lot of founders to just see that radical transparency and just going at it with an open mind. So thanks for sharing this on the episode, and happy to do it again sometime.
I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure, Anna. Thank you.
Same here, and take care.